Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad. My name is Wes Coons, and I am glad to have you here. This is going to be a special edition. You know, one of the things I talked about when I started the program is this program is going to be real. We're going to talk about how life happens for you and not to you, how you can become a better person, how you can heal from the things that haunt you from the past. And this week I lost my brother, Dennis. He died on Father's Day at about 1:30 in the morning. And most of my family were there when that happened. You know, I didn't have a very, very close relationship with him. We loved each other. However, the honest answer is we've seen each other for an hour or so a year at Thanksgiving, and that was it. And we were okay with that. So as my brother basically died in his sleep, his girlfriend wakes up and the family comes to try to help. And long story short, without getting into great detail, my brother goes home in front of his son. My father watched his child die, and my siblings were all there. So I found myself wondering, what lessons are in this? How could there be lessons in this? He was just 62 years old last month, and now he's gone. I'll never, ever get to see his beautiful eyes again, hear him tell his silly jokes and do his Pee Wee Herman dance. And I'm going to miss that. But, one of the things in my life that's an opportunity is I'm a healer. And I have these gifts that God gave me. And I don't know why he chose me. However, he chose me for a reason. And part of that reason is to help people understand how you can be a beacon of light on this planet, how you can heal from the things that haunt you. And I'm going to share a little bit of what I'm doing to heal from this. So I hope you enjoy it. And I hope that you can take a piece of it and implement it in your life. And thank you for trusting me to go through this journey with you. I greatly appreciate it. When I woke up the other morning and I realized my sisters had called me 12 times throughout the night, I thought it was my dad because we were going to celebrate his 91st birthday on Father's Day. I thought Daddy went home. And I was blown away when I called. My sister said, "Hey, Dennis died last night." And the EMT guys and ladies worked on him for over an hour, and they couldn't do anything. And somebody had reached out and said, Wes, your whole life is going to change now. There's going to be this empty void for not having your brother in it. And the sad thing is, I'm probably not. I love my brother, but I seen him an hour or two a year, let's be honest. And he and I were okay with that. When my dad and mom retired and moved to Florida like 16, 17 years ago, we allowed the family to disintegrate. We allowed the family events to go away. We allowed jealousy and arguments to keep us from being a family. And I took it as a slight from my dad. And I said, wait a minute, you said family is the most important thing, and you bailed on us. We did this men's camping trip every year. And I remember when Daddy decided he wasn't going to do it anymore, it pissed me off. And that camping trip stopped after that. None of us guys got together. So I've been working on healing this anger towards my father for a long time. And the reality is, what I didn't understand, and I understood this week after Dennis died, is that Dad didn't bail on us. What Dad did was he stepped aside, and one of his sons were supposed to have picked up the reins and helped guide the family. And I didn't understand that. And none of us were prepared for that. So there's been this gap in the Coons family for a very, very long time. So the whole family, for the most part, the whole family is down in the Outer Banks. And this is where this event happened. My daughter Sydney flew in on Father's Day, and she got a 6:30 phone call from me that Uncle Denny is gone. So she comes in yesterday, and we hang out, and we have a really nice time. So today, we're supposed to drive the hour and a half down to the Outer Banks. And we didn't want to go. And, I've got all these energetic gifts. I can talk to dead people. That's yay me sometimes, however I can. And one of the things I do is I help people transition to the light and go home to God after they've died. So I seen my brother immediately after I woke up. Once they told me he had died, I tried to connect with him, and there he was. So what that looks like is we are alive right now, and when you die, you have an opportunity to go to the light and go home to God and get a blessing and get wings and do all the things that angels do, whatever that is, right? But if you don't go, you're on the in-between. And sometimes people don't go because they don't realize they're dead. Maybe they're killed really fast. Maybe they had an overdose. Maybe they have things that they consider as unfinished business and they stay back to do. Well, that's where Dennis was. So Denny is in the in-between. And I connected with him and started to talk to him. He didn't understand what was going on. And this may be a lot for some of you to process. However, I promise you it's a real thing. So as I'm talking to him, he doesn't understand that he's dead yet. And I would imagine he probably had a couple cocktails before he went to bed. Then, of course, he was asleep. And I believe he had an aneurysm and died very, very quickly. So I've got this going on in the background, and I can literally see my brother as I'm getting phone calls from family members trying to figure out, what does this mean? What does this look like? And the old tape of, here we go, the family's just falling apart, keeps playing in my mind. And I didn't want to go to the Outer Banks today. So long story short, before we went, I took Sydney down to my healing office at the beach, and I did a healing session on her, and my brother comes in. And when somebody's on the in-between, the conversations are very, very fluid for me, just like you would talk to somebody at McDonald's. And he comes in, and I felt him coming, and I knew he was there. And he said, "Hey, brother, this is what you do." I didn't understand it, but Mom's been telling me about it all day long. And of course, Mom's in heaven too, right? So as I'm talking to him, he's telling me the messages he wants to give me. He's telling me the messages to give his sons and how proud he is of them and how much he loves them. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful exchange. And I got to be honest, it was hard. I've never lost a brother before, never lost a sister before. When Mom went to heaven, that was horrible. But Dennis laughed and joked and gave me all these messages. And shortly after that, he crossed over to the light. I seen him standing in front of me as I was driving down the street, and he started to fade away. And I texted my sister. I said, "Hey, Denny just went to the light." And she says, his girlfriend, out of respect, I'm not going to say her name, but his girlfriend just started to break down, and she looked at me and said, "Dennis just crossed the light." She knew. She felt it. And it's just, you can't make that stuff up. You can't make up that 2 or 3 people felt him going at the same time. So, your human mind wants to go in there and say, oh, you're just making it up. It's your brother. These things don't happen, but it's real. So as I tuned into him, I seen him fade away and watched him get his angel wings. And my mom was there and my uncles were there. And there's thousands of angels behind them waiting for him to come home. It was quite beautiful. So Sydney and I drive the hour and a half to the beach house. And as we pull in about a mile from the house, I could feel the energy of the house, and I'm starting to get sick to my stomach. And I told her, I can't stay the night. I'm going to stay for about an hour, and then I'm going to roll out. So as we get there, I have nieces and nephews coming up and hugging me and people crying. And one of my nephews says, Uncle Wes, we did everything we could. And I'm like, honey, Dennis showed me he died in his bed. By the time you got there and started CPR, he was already gone. You did nothing wrong. And Dennis did me that service to show that to me so they could not feel guilty for what happened. And I got to be honest, I did not want to go in that fucking house. I was so sick to my stomach being there. I could feel the death of the event. And I didn't want to go. So as we go up the stairs to this house, I didn't know exactly where everything happened. But as we walked in the front foyer, I could feel the energy, and I just pointed. I said, that's where they worked on him. And my sister said, yes, honey, that's where it was. The energy was super thick. It was excruciatingly painful for me. I was losing hearing in my ears. My ears were ringing. I was getting nauseous. And I'm like, well, which bedroom was it? And as I walked into the bedroom, it was interesting. His bedroom, the energy was good in there. But in the hallway, it was horrible. And the reason it was horrible is the energy of the trauma trying to save his life. I mean, you think about that. The EMTs come in, they're ripping his shirt open, they're putting IVs in, they're putting electric shocks on his chest. All that energy stays present. The energy of my family crying is present. It seeps into the walls. So my sister goes, are you staying the night tonight? I'm like, oh no, honey, I can't. If I were, which room would I stay in? My sister's like, well, you could stay in Dennis's room. I'm like, he just fucking died there. I ain't sleeping in that bed. And she says, well, you could sleep in the other room. And that's like 2 feet from where they did all this work, right? So I'm like, I'm good. I am not sleeping in that energy of that shit. I cannot be here. So I went up and I seen my daddy and stuff and talked to him. And, I got the opportunity to pull his sons to the side and give them the messages from my brother. And I told him, I said, hey, look, your daddy told me how much he loved you, how much he appreciates you. And the rest of those messages, I'm going to keep private for them. But my message to them was, I am going to step into the father role that Dennis is not able to do for you. I will be at your weddings if you want me to be in that position. And the more I've thought about it, and Dad stepped out and said, I'm not doing the family camping trips. He's handing the reins over to the men in the family, and we didn't comprehend it. So I'm looking at, we've been abandoned. We've been duped. We've been lied to that family is important. And the reality is there was a changing of the guard, and we did not understand it. As I'm having these conversations with these young men, I'm starting to realize these things, right? Because I'm looking for, where are the blessings in this tragedy? I believe we come here on a contract. We have lessons to learn. And Dennis's contract was up. There wasn't going to be any saving him at 62 years old. So what happens next? The first thought is, the family's just going to disintegrate even more. And what's one more person not coming around? We don't see him anyways. And the reality is, what I started to think about is, what a fucking loss of years that he and I could have done something together, that we could have come together and helped this family grow. But instead, we did something different because we didn't know any better. So I pulled one of my nephews aside and we had some conversations trying to help him with some things. And I had conversations with everybody there that I had to go. I was really, really uncomfortable, really sick. But I grabbed my one nephew, and I'm going to leave their names out of it because, I just think it's respectful to do that. Even though they are adults, they don't need those names brought into the mix. And I said, come here, honey. I want you to help me. We're going to shift the energy where they worked on your dad. And I asked him, I said, what do you feel? He's like, oh, it's thick. It's thick. I can feel it. And I'm like, that's right. So we lit some Palo Santo wood. I did some healing work. I put some healing symbols on the walls, and the energy started to shift. So I asked him, I said, what do you feel? He's like, oh, it's getting better. It's getting lighter. I like that. So I was sharing with him what energy feels like. I was sharing with him that there's another way to look at things. And I told him, I said, the gifts that I have, you have. You can feel the energy. And he kind of looked at me funny because he doesn't understand. I mean, how do you know unless somebody helps you understand it? And I'm helping him understand it by feeling what that is going through. And I told him, I said, you might not do the work that I do. You're sensitive to this work. And I just want you to know that I love you. Your father loves you. And we're going to do something different. And I didn't know what that different was. So I left there, and it took me about 2 hours to feel better after driving home. I mean, I had my dog in the dog care facility. The lady's like, I thought you were staying the night somewhere. I'm like, yeah, I was. But so I come home, and I'm thinking about this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? We have an opportunity to do something different. We definitely have an opportunity to go get drunk, get high, take some pills, smoke some pot, do whatever some people will do in a tragic event. And I'm not disrespecting anybody for doing that. However, there's another alternative. That other alternative is looking for the blessings in the pain. The blessings in the pain is there is still an opportunity for a male figure to step up in this family and lead the family to learn how to heal, learn how to be better, learn how to process through this, how to take the men that are growing up in this family and teach them to be leaders, to love themselves, to be amazing people, to be beacons of light, and to do something fucking different. Because we've been broken for too long, and I'm fucking tired of it. And I've been part of that. And I've been having my friends tell me, you need to heal that family aspect. And I couldn't. I didn't know how. I didn't want to, or whatever it was. I've been working on all this stuff, and that's one part that I didn't know how to process. And Dennis showed me the way. So I think it's about time for the healer and the family to step up. For me to step up and say, guys, we're going to do something different. And if you would like to participate, we would love to have you here. And bring this family back together. And take my frustration, my judgment, my anger, my whatever you want to call it, and set it aside, heal it, and change the dynamics of my life and the dynamics of my family. Because I like to say for a very long time, I'm one of like 40 people in the family and I don't know anybody. That's because I chose not to know anybody. Because I chose not to be a part of it. Because I chose to carry anger and frustration towards siblings. And the reality is, that's old news. The reality is, we can heal from that stuff. The reality is, I've got my brother's 2 boys that don't have a father figure, need somebody to step up, and I'm going to do that. The reason I'm telling the story today is to honor my brother and say, Dennis, I love you. And to say, I made a mistake and I'm going to do something about it. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but the beauty and the pain of this is we're going to mend the dynamics of this family. Those grandbabies are going to see their fathers and their uncles communicating at a level we've never communicated before. They're going to see us healing from the trauma that haunts us. They're going to see their uncles getting better. And then their dads are going to start shifting. And the boys and the girls in the family, the babies, are going to say, wow, this is different energy. There's no more anger. There's no more frustration. There's no more gossip. We are going to take the generational curses that are still in place in this family, and we're going to create generational blessings. Because that's what we talk about on this show, is creating generational blessings. And if I can't be real about the stuff that I go through and the things and the mistakes that I make, how can I help you? How can I change things for you if I'm going to lie to you? So I'm going to tell all. And you know what? I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it's sure as shit going to be better than what we did before, because we turned our back on everything and said, oh, well, Pop bailed on us. Pop's not part of it. Well, he's fucking 91 years old, and he's been waiting around for us to be men and step up and lead the family. So the blessings that came from this is apparently in the last couple of weeks, my brother got to mend some relationships that were not right. His soul knew he was leaving. He got to tell his kids how much he loved them. Not everybody gets that, but he did. And his brothers get a look at life differently, because he just was 62 last month, and I'll be 55 this year. And my brother Dennis was funny, he was amazing, he was beautiful, but he could not share his feelings and emotions. And that's just the truth of it. And he loved us, but he couldn't say that clearly. Isn't it time we work on breaking that generational curse, that he gets to communicate clearly from the other side and share his feelings and emotions? But wouldn't it have been nice to be able to live a life like that? And that's what I'm going to do, and that's what we're going to do to help my family shift and do things different. My sister said that when this all happened, our mom was in the room. And when I could see Dennis on the in-between, my mom was there, my Uncle Jim was there. After a little while, I could see my Uncle Larry and some other angels, and finally tons of angels standing behind them, supporting him. What a beautiful life we have. And it's short sometimes. And it's not fair sometimes. And we get hurt sometimes. But I'm not going to make my story this little boy who was raped as a kid, whose brother died, who got beat up by the other kids in the neighborhood. That ain't my story. It's an experience that I went through. And what I'm trying to share with you is that the trauma from the past doesn't have to be your story. Your story is fucking beautiful. Your story is you're a single mom that's raising your children and fighting all the odds and becoming this amazing, powerful woman and raising your babies. Or your story is, you're this veteran who got out of the military and figured things out, and you're working through your shit and you've asked for help. Or your story is, I'm this beautiful father of 3 and I've got this wonderful set of children, and I learned how to communicate to my spouse and tell my children that I love them. That's a story, because the trauma that we went through is a sentence or a paragraph in the back of your book. It was an experience you were supposed to have experienced during this life journey. And when somebody told me you can change your story, I'm like, I like that. It took me a bit to process it. When somebody told me you come here on a contract and that was supposed to happen to you, after I was done being pissed off about it, because like, who is going to agree to have these horrible things happen to you in your life? Well, we did. Because if I look at it as there's a contract that I had to follow and I just fulfilled my contract, I'm not a victim. I wanted to not be a victim of my abuse anymore. So this gave me the ability to check the box on a contract. It's an experience, and I'm changing my story. You know, one of the other things I did when I got that phone call is I had this overwhelming feeling of loneliness. Because the honest answer is I live in this house by myself with my dog. And I didn't have anybody to hold me and to just cry. And Abigail had diarrhea, so she was outside, so that didn't happen. But, you know, I've wanted to get remarried for a long time. That hasn't happened. And here I am, you know, I'm this healer. I'm all these things they say I'm supposed to be, and I guess I am, but that's one thing I haven't brought in yet. And as I thought about it, I'm like, how am I supposed to draw in my wife if I can't even heal my family I have now? So I don't know what my journey is for that part of my life to come into play. But what I'm going to continue to do is self-healing. I'm going to continue to better myself. I'm going to continue to look for the parts of myself that I'm still afraid of, I'm still ashamed of, I'm still scared of, and I'm going to find that piece of me and recognize it and talk to it and love it and shift that energy. I mean, hell, this is the work that I do. I move through those things pretty quick these days, but there's still stuff there. So if you're sitting at home and this past relationship is just eating you alive, the mistakes that you made are eating you alive, I want you to think about this. If we came here on a contract, you're supposed to have experienced that. You were supposed to have made that mistake. You were supposed to have done whatever that is. So it's not your story. It's a sentence or a paragraph in the back of your book. You can feel any feeling and emotion that you want to feel, but don't have guilt and shame attached to feeling angry, sad, miserable, pissed off. You're allowed to be. I'm fucking pissed off he's not here. Well, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for all the beautiful things people have said. I hope that I am making a difference in your life, because that's what this is about, is sharing my experience on that horrible haunted house, how we shifted things, how I got better, how I survived it, and how I'm doing things now and thriving now. And I think it's important that you know when I'm struggling, because we don't ever get to a point where basically life doesn't come into play. It does, but it's how we react to it. And I can heal through things so much faster now and get back on track. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to love my brother. I'm going to love my brother. I love my brother. But he gave me an opportunity to do something different, and I'm going to fucking take that, and we're going to do something different. And I'm going to lead the pack. And we're going to talk about getting better and loving ourselves and healing ourselves and stuff like that. So I want to say thank you again. The show's going to be back up here soon. And if somebody hasn't told you today, you are loved, you are beautiful, you are gifted, and And there's a version of you we haven't met yet, and together we're going to find that version. We'll see you next time.